On today's video, we're going to talk about how to add this frosted glass effect to a website. Now, as we see, as we scroll down the page, we'll see this kind of frosted glass, like almost like a Mac OS style as we go up and down the page. So how do we go about making this? Now, before we start, I want to give a shout out to atlascard.com, which is where I saw this effect. This is a beautiful website. As you can see, this header is also very beautiful. And as we scroll up and down the page, we can see this frosted glass effect here. So in today's video, we're going to talk about how we make this from scratch. So firstly, we're going to start off with the bog standard website. So something that looks a little bit like this. Here, our header is just solid color. As we scroll, it kind of isn't see-through at all. And we can see here, particularly, it's kind of blurring into the background. So how do we make this frosted effect? So there's a few ways to go about this, but let's just talk about the project so far. Well, here's our HTML. At the moment, we've got this header, which is over the top of everything. We have the hero section and the content section in here as well. We've got all of our style sheets in here, just one of them. And in here, we have a header, which is position fixed. It's top, left, and right, just to kind of give it an inset. And then we have some padding and some border radius. And by default, we have this background color. So if we change this background color very quickly to something like a red color, something like this, and press save, what we'll see is this being red at the top of the page, which kind of makes sense. So what could we do here instead? Now there's a few different options, but we kind of want to go towards the frosted glass effect. But like, how do we go towards that? Well, let's just make it white again. How would we kind of pull this out of the page a little bit more? Well, one of the most obvious things is to add a box shadow. So let's just show what this looks like. Let's underneath add a box shadow. And here it takes three different things. So an X, Y, and a blur. So we'll say 0, 4 pixels. So X across is 0, 4 down, make it a 12 pixel blur. And let's give it a color. So let's give it a black color. There we go. So if we save now, what we'll see is this does highlight, but it's very aggressive. We can see this box shadow being on here. It's 4 pixels down and it's 0 across. Now, what we might want to do is just soften this a little bit rather than be pure black. Now, the way that we could do this is by making this have some alpha transparency. Now, there's two ways to do this. We could change the way this looks. So in previous videos, we would have done something like this, RGBA, and then 0, 0, 0. And then we have some alpha transparency in here as well. And if we save this now, this will just soften it a lot. But we can also do this using hex values too. So if I revert back to what I had, which looks like this, if I press undo enough times, we get back to the pure black. But what we can also do is add two more values on the end here, which represents an alpha transparency. So if we do something like 8.8, which is kind of like a middle, this is like 50% alpha. We can see it being softened here. If I do it something like 1.1 and press save, this is very, very soft. So if we go to 0, this is 0 alpha. If we go to FF, this is full alpha, basically kind of what we had from here. But this is kind of how we kind of soften this. But this isn't really what we want. We want a kind of glass effect. Now, what I want to do is basically make this whole white area a bit more transparent. So we're going to get rid of this box shadow. I'm just going to comment this out for now. Back to what we had. What I want to do is make this background color a little bit see-through. So using the same idea as what we have here, I'm just going to make it slightly transparent. So to do this, I'm going to go to 8.8, kind of like half alpha. And we can see here that this is now transparent, but this doesn't give us our glass effect in here. Now, what we want to do is blur the background so that when we see things in the background, they don't look like what the background is. So how would we do this? Now, what we would do to blur usually is add a filter with blur. So just to show you how this would look, we would use something like filter with a blur, and in round brackets, something like 16 pixels. If we save this now and refresh, what we see is the header itself is blurred. We want the background to be blurred instead. So we're not going to use filter here, but what we're going to use instead is something called a backdrop dash filter. Basically something in the background. How do we filter that instead? So here, what we're going to do is blur 16. And what we could see now is if we save and refresh, this now gives us our glass effect. So this is a very quick technique. It's very easy to add. All we need to do is change our background color to be a little bit more transparent. and then add this backdrop filter. We can change how this looks. So if I want this to be a little bit more white, I could change this to be a little bit higher. So something like CC, which is kind of a little bit thicker, we can see here. And what I could also do is change the blur as well. The bigger the number, the higher the blur. So here what I can do is really start to play around with this to get this glass effect working really quickly.